"Are they still chasing us?" Cynthia asked, as most of her attention was focused on Wyatt. Half an hour had passed since the pilot lost consciousness, and the Drazen were stubbornly chasing them. Either Wyatt managed to anger them greatly and now sought to kill them, or they were so confident that their assaulting forces would capture the station that they decided to eliminate the unforeseen threat the Noir Navio represented. "Yes! Their fighters are closing in en masse! They're starting to overwhelm the PD turrets that can target them," Galt answered. "Missile pods 1 through 6 are ready to fire. We just need to lock targets, ma'am." "Not yet. The closer they get, the better our chances to take them down. How many fighters are following us?" Cynthia replied, as she internally cursed that Wyatt's armor was standard and thus lacked the means for her to monitor his vitals directly. The bleeding had stopped, and she could see the nanites spreading across his body thanks to the grayish tinge around his neck, eyes, and lips. He was still alive, breathing, and she could feel his pulse. Weak, but it was there. "Lady Cynthia, the jamming and scrambling signals of the Drazen have been losing their effectiveness slowly after the destruction of their first cruiser. We cannot establish contact with Woodshaft or the Prince, but our sensor field has been significantly expanded. It would seem Woodshaft is under siege." "Orders, Lady Cynthia?" a Royal Marine asked, impassive and serious. "Common Drazen raiding tactic. Even if we head over to the station, we won't be able to do much. The rest of the Drazen fleet is focused on destroying us after Wyatt's actions. Every moment we keep the bulk of their remaining forces away from Woodshaft and focused on us is far more helpful than the little aid we could provide on the ground," she replied, mirroring Wyatt's reasoning and seeing that he had spoken true. "We shall continue and avoid making any harsh course corrections. Galt, how many fighters are you detecting?" "We are detecting over 400 fighters. I didn't know those monsters were capable of fielding so many fighters into a ship that's not a dedicated carrier," he replied swiftly. "Now I am far more grateful that the lieutenant managed to destroy one of those cruisers. Drazen raiding ships are a mix between a warship and a cargo hauler. Also, they can fit more of their precious feed inside their ships. Most patrol fleets would stand no chance against a fleet like the one we're facing. It truly speaks to the power of this ship. Tell me, Galt, was Samuel Caiston a talented captain?" "He was, Lady Cynthia. Only his cousin, Lord Andrew Caiston, is said to surpass him in intellect and skills," Galt replied. "I believe he had many medals and commendations under his name. Which ones, I know not." Cynthia absorbed his words and mused them for a moment. She wasn't a shrewd politician like Clara, nor was she comparable to her sister's commanding talent and expertise. But she was no moron either. Lengthy meetings, hearing, and aiding her friend had taught her a thing or two. "What do you think he would have done in our place?" "Run away and retreat as his orders demanded," Galt replied, then grimaced. "And even without them, I believe he would have retreated or remained hidden regardless. He was an ambitious man and wished to further his standing within House Caiston and in the eyes of Duke Draymore, no doubt." Cynthia frowned slightly. The way Galt spoke of the late Samuel Caiston indicated a measure of respect, but no fondness nor familiarity. "Were you not his underling before obtaining this ship?" "Heavens, no. I operated as a lieutenant commander on the 3rd Fleet, 1st Patrol. Specifically, the APNV Grace of Divination, a battle cruiser." Galt paused for a moment, fingers moving across his terminal. "Score 3 hits, he announced with a nervous sigh. "I met Lord Samuel 6 months ago and was placed under his command before the ship was delivered to him." Cynthia felt a wave of dread wash over her as a question ran through her mind. How many ships like the Noir Navio, or worse, ships more powerful than it are at Duke Draymore's disposition? Thanks to Wyatt's ambush, they didn't find out the true capabilities of the cruiser, but judging by the battle, it was easy to conclude that the stealth cruiser was inferior to the Noir Navio. Do you believe he would have performed well in combat? Comparing his by-the-book attitude and honoring the rules of engagement to what I've witnessed so far, he would have commanded this vessel in actual combat gallantly but ineffectively. I have never seen a man command a ship with such ferocity and trickery. The lieutenant exploited his advantages well, and he didn't make use of all his weaponry. I wonder why he didn't. Regardless, I believe Lord Samuel would have been hard-pressed to even disable the destroyer during the same circumstances," Galt explained truthfully. Then he gazed upon the unconscious man. "Lady Cynthia, if I may be so bold, will he survive?" "I plan to make him survive. Lieutenant Wyatt Staples, proved himself reliable before, then he proved his worth and talent as a pilot. Now I doubt my princess, nor the prince for that matter, will allow his life to go to waste," Cynthia replied, relieved that Wyatt's pulse felt stronger than before. Galt's words gave her a moment's pause, though. He's correct in his assumption about Wyatt's approach to combat. What was he planning on doing next? Was powering all weapons, blatantly giving away his position through heat built up part of his strategy? It worked against the crippled destroyer, and the way he assaulted the Drazen confounds me so. He went in for the kill, no glory whatsoever, and he laughed so boisterously when the cruiser was destroyed. Uncouth, yet relatable given the enemy we're facing. No commanding officer should showcase such glee so openly. For that matter, most admirals and other high-ranking Navy personnel would never be so bold as to strike at the Drazen so brazenly, unless they were to command a heavy assault patrol. Her thoughts came to an end when she heard the red-haired man release a restrained sigh. "Then I shall pray for his well-being. Lady Cynthia, the fighters are nearly within effective range lock. Missile pods are loaded and we are ready to perform quick-fire reloading if need be," Galt announced. "Do not burn yourself unless necessary. Reload at regular speed. When ready, lock onto the nearest fighters. 3 missiles for each fighter and open fire freely. After that, repeat the volley. Take down as many of those murderous plants as possible," she ordered. "Firing," Galt announced. A minute of tense silence followed before he spoke again. 6 volleys fired and proved to be largely ineffective. Drazen fighters countered with missiles of their own and flares. Only 11 fighters were destroyed. "Shall we fire again? They seem to be unable to lock onto us." "Keep firing as long as they are within lock range. Either they shall run out of flares and intercept missiles of their own, or will inflict so many casualties that they will give up the chase," Cynthia ordered. Another long, tense minute went by until a voice spoke up. "Lady Cynthia," a Royal Marine announced, "ships have been detected at the edge of our sensors. It appears to be His Majesty's fleet set on a course to Woodshaft. The Drazen fleet has broken chase and appears to be disengaging entirely." "Confirmed, Lady Cynthia. Drazen fighters are disengaging and peeling away," Galt informed, relieved. Cynthia allowed herself a sigh of relief, but she wasn't one to fall into complacency. "Slowly turn away from the Drazen and set a course to Woodshaft. If the plants wish to run, then let them. We have achieved victory for now, but it won't be a complete one until the Drazen leave the system or they are hunted down." "What else can go wrong?" the prince asked himself as he stared at the black monitors before him. "We barely escaped the clutches of my uncle. We managed to elude capture and escape to fringe territories by keeping a low profile and gathering loyalist forces in the process," he hummed deeply. "Only for those black ships to appear, we suffered an ambush that reduced our already weakened fleet, and now Drazen raiders. If Clara is captured, we can negotiate. If she dies, this conflict will only escalate out of my control." "Cynthia will not allow harm to come to her, my prince," Juliana replied as she and Redford stood at each side of the blonde man, bearing the burden of the entire principality on his shoulders. "Nor shall my Royal Marines. If House Caiston is involved in this assault, I implore you, my liege, to cast them out and exterminate their bloodline. For no other punishment shall suffice. Conjoining with that filth, words fail me to describe the ire I am experiencing and their vile treason. It is beyond what I can fathom," Redford said, glaring at empty space. "Let us not jump to conclusions so hastily, Redford. You were the one that taught me to think with a cool head and seek out the truth before coming to a rash decision, did you not?" the prince said, his voice cold and focused. "Rest easy, for I shall not stay my hand if proof arises that House Caiston summoned these raiders regardless of their intent." He clenched his hands into shaky fists and narrowed his eyes. "If they are guilty, they shall answer not only for putting the life of my sister in jeopardy, but the blood of thousands shall be on their necks. As much as I detest these honorless traitors, I hold on to the slim chance that they are innocent. Willingly setting anyone, human or not, to suffer the fate that the Drazen hold is an act of treason against your species and sapience as a whole." No mercy must be awarded to such criminals, Juliana stated coldly, voice shaking with barely contained anger. Redford, do you have any guess as to the size of the raider fleet? To be able to disrupt our communications and sensors to this extent, and taking into account the size, power, and population of Woodshaft, I believe that we may face anything ranging from 4 to 7 ships. The warp signature we detected was large, so those ships arrived closely together. It is more than likely that there is at least one cruiser class at their disposal. Probably 2, Redford replied. My prince, I request permission to send boarding parties to Woodshaft before the Drazen begin their assault in full. By now, they surely have sent their vanguard troops to soften up the defenses and disable automated defenses, Juliana asked seriously. Until we have a clear visual confirmation of the station, I shall not allow you to leave. Captain Milcades and the rest of the Royal Marines shall buy us some time, the prince replied without looking at his 2 most trusted commanders. My greatest priority is to ensure the survival of the fleet and myself. Everything else is secondary, even my sister's survival. Clenching his teeth in impotence, he took a deep breath before continuing. Redford, are your fighters ready for departure? Yes, my liege. Our losses were regrettable, and we have a shortage of pilots. Across our fleet, I can only field a full talon, Redford replied obediently. If I may, my prince, I wish to lead this talon in person. I, too, am a fighter pilot. Without access to our long-range communicators, my capabilities as a commander shall be limited. It shall be a pitched battle against their fighters first, but if we coordinate correctly, we can overcome their numerical superiority. I forbid it, the prince said in no uncertain terms. I need you at my side, Redford. Besides, your children and your wife would not forgive me if I allowed you to die such a needless death. As you command, my liege, Redford retorted. Do you wish me to deploy my fighters? Have them on standby. They shall be deployed at the same time as the boarding pods and shuttles. Their objectives shall be harassing and supportive actions. Leave the main fleet alone and let the joint forces of Woodshaft and my fleet scatter the Drazen and force them to retreat. With any luck, they shall be content with a meager capture of their precious feed and decide that facing more of our forces is not worth the risk, the prince said firmly. Juliana, if Cynthia were to perish in the defense of Clara, I assure you, she will be granted the highest of honors once my uncle is dealt with. She's a Winfield, my prince. She shall do her duty. Serving the just and rightful House Astor is our greatest honor. Always have been, always will be, Juliana replied, giving the prince a soft smile. Loyalty is its own reward. Indeed, said the aged commander. Fret not, my prince. Your uncle failed to capture you twice, failed to capture or eliminate Clara, and has failed to eliminate you through underhanded means if this Drazen assault is of Caiston make. We may not know what happened to Princes Giovanni and Alexander, but as long as you are free and able to fight for your rightful throne, we shall strive onwards, my liege. Your confidence and trust in me reassure me, Redford. You served my father proudly, and now you serve me with that same unquestionable diligence. He would be pleased, the prince said, giving the gray-haired man a faint appreciative smile. Several minutes passed in relative silence as the weight weighed upon them. Suddenly the prince stiffened. Speak, Admiral, he said, receiving a direct message from Admiral Damien. Opening a link with Redford and Juliana, the 3 heard the Admiral's words intently. My liege, my comm officers have confirmed that the intensity of the Drazen jammers and scramblers has reduced by a considerable margin. It is not enough to enable long-range communications, but our sensor sweep area has been increased substantially. We are detecting Woodshaft within sensor range, and I can confirm that it is under siege, and a small defensive fleet has been deployed and is protecting Woodshaft. However, most curiously, there are no signs of enemy ships near the station, Admiral Damien reported. Where are they, then? Those monsters wouldn't let up a prized hunting ground without any good reason, Redford said, frowning deeply. I can't be sure, Commander Redford, but sensors are detecting a barely perceptible signature at the edge of our current capabilities. 3 ships. No, wait, there's a 4th heat signature moving away from the rest of the ships. Its vector indicates that is moving away from Woodshaft with no clear destination in mind. The Admiral paused for a moment, then, in a more serious tone, continued. My liege, if I am correct, the leading vessel is a black ship. I can't detect the mass of the object, only a faint heat signature. The other 3 ships are Drazan-made. A black ship running away from their allies? The prince asked out loud before anyone could jump to conclusions. Why would the Drazan obey prey? Is it possible that this black ship is fighting them? Redford crossed his arms. A most probable scenario, my liege. If the aliens diverted their attention from their main goal to deal with a single ship, then that gives us time to bring aid. Juliana, you have my permission to go. Send in your Marines and boarders. Lead the assault and take 10 of our remaining Royal Marines as your escort and elite assault unit. The remaining 10 Royal Marines shall be more than enough to protect me. Support Woodshaft, save as many as you can, and rescue our sisters. Burn those abominations to ash, the prince ordered. My prince! Juliana saluted, turned, and quickly made her way out of the war room. Redford, send out your fighters to the black ship. It must be the one that escaped the battle. Order your fighters to disable or cripple it if they refuse to surrender. The prince paused. On second thought, Redford, lead them, but avoid fighting yourself. I need someone I can trust completely to act as my eyes, ears, and voice involving the chance to capture such a vessel. I hear and I obey, my prince. It shall be done, Redford replied, saluting and then moving to leave. I shall return to you, my liege. As Redford left, the prince turned around again, his attention on the black screens. A second later, a rough depiction of the Exalted Virtue's tactical display appeared on it. He focused on it for what felt like forever as he watched his ragtag fleet approaching Woodshaft at a steady pace. He received a near-simultaneous report that both Juliana and Redford had left the Exalted Virtue to fulfill his orders. A chime alerted him that someone was outside the door and wished to enter. Connecting to the surveillance system, he saw that Lukacs Ishtal was standing outside the room, while 5 Royal Marines wearing their regular combat armor guarded each side of the hallway. 2 of them moved to flank Lukacs. With a thought, he opened the door. My prince, I bring news regarding our problem regarding the traitors among our numbers, Lukacs said firmly. The prince turned to face the dignified, slim, tall, blond man and studied his expression for a split second. He was as focused as always, but his eyes, despite cybernetic, revealed he had something serious to tell him in person. Leave us, he commanded, and the 2 Royal Marines left without fail. Speak, Lukacs. My prince, the QEC has been found, Lukacs revealed without hesitation. I could not entrust the network with such information. I had to come and inform you personally of this development. The prince nodded, his expression impassive and forever dignified. Internally, he was both disappointed and angered at the same time. Hoping against hope, he held to the chance that such a thing wasn't possible. But now that he heard confirmation that there were traitors among his closest loyal subjects, he didn't know which emotion was stronger. Show it to me, he commanded. My liege, Lukacs replied, saluting. The wood was hard but familiar. The bark had many splinters, and the edges could cut anyone that didn't know how to handle the small piece of wood currently in his hand. It had a healthy brown exterior and a reddish, opaque core. It was simple, yet beautiful to behold. A contrast to the danger the piece of wood projected even after being chopped down. But to Wyatt, the feeling of the wood was familiar and brought with it a strange sense of comfort. Nodding to himself, he sat back on his chair and picked up a knife before beginning the long, dull process of giving it shape. Carving wood by hand was time-consuming, but it helped him relax after a long day of study and work. Living on the outskirts of the city had its benefits, such as the beautiful view of the forest in the distance contrasting the city behind him and the orbital launch station just beyond the horizon in the other direction. The sun was setting, giving a beautiful blue, orange, red, and violet sunset that contrasted against the slowly darkening sky and the emerging stars visible through the light pollution of the city. He could already hear the ferchatas singing their nightly song. Heh, annoying little buggers, he whispered to himself as the knife moved with practiced ease across the piece of wood he was holding, each strike sending a thin sheet of discarded bark or wood onto the floor. The distant chirp of a clicksaw caught his attention, reminding him that mating season was starting for the annoying, deadly birds. Inside his home, he could hear his father tinkering away inside his garage with Wham helping him. They loved fixing and repairing commonplace appliances. A much cheaper alternative over buying a new one, and many commoners and some poor low-tier nobles went to him to save a few credits. Despite being an electrical engineer and earning a good salary, his father's love for tinkering and fixing things never failed to make him smile. He once tried his hand at it and found out he was no good whatsoever. He had an eye for detail, but he couldn't fix anything worth a damn even with his father guiding him. Instead, he turned to work at a local wood processing factory. The pay was fair most of the time, and he could take discarded pieces for himself without any issue. Plus, it granted him a standard record of compliance, obedience, and work hours necessary to apply for entry to the academy, alongside a good score in his studies. The academy. His eyes drifted to the stars above, wishing to be there someday. "Are you seriously going to do it, Wyatt?" The voice of his first younger brother, Weskel, brought his attention back down, and he turned to see his brother, almost a copy of himself, except that his eyes were like their mother's, yellow instead of brown. He was wearing leather armor with a rifle hanging from his shoulder. A dozen long, bright green feathers decorated his belt proudly. Wyatt whistled. "A dozen of them? You got lucky," Wyatt replied as his hand kept carving away. "More like the cheeky things got too hungry. It was a good day, yeah. Scope and drop. Clicksall chicks are an easier target than their parents," Weskel said, proud of himself. "Are you going to answer my question?" "Didn't hear you arrive," Wyatt deflected. "I saw you daydreaming from down the lane, Wyatt, so you really gonna do it, huh?" Weskel insisted. Wyatt shrugged. "I don't see why I shouldn't. I'm not particularly good at anything, and we both know I have a knack for piloting." "Yeah, but why risk your life and leave us, bro? You're an even better shot than I am. You could easily become a Clicksall hunter like me and become a ranger. You'd be set for life." Another cry from a Clicksall off in the distance interrupted him. With a chuckle, he continued. "Not like we're ever going to get rid of those pests. Better for me. More Clicksall, better pay." "That's your calling, Wes. Mine is up there," Wyatt replied, pointing to the sky with his knife. "I want to see what's out there. Serve the Principality and protect it and its people." "I know," Weskel replied, unflinching his rifle and sitting next to his brother as he returned to carving. "Dad doesn't want you to go. Wham thinks you're so cool. And Mom? You know she cries at night when she thinks we can't hear her, right?" "Yeah, I know," Wyatt replied, his expression dropping slightly. "Those that leave rarely survive long-term, and even fewer return. But if I complete my service with honors and distinction, I'll get lifelong standing, steady income, and a comfortable life. When I'm back, if they're still alive, I'll be able to take care of Mom and Dad for the rest of their lives. It's not much, but it is the best I can do." "Or you could end like Mr. Warlow, ranting all day about blue bloods." The two shared a hearty chuckle. When it ended, a few seconds of silence passed between them, with only the knife scraping against wood joining the Furchada's serenade. "You could, stay and not risk your life like that," Wescal insisted. "Please, Wyatt, you could join the diplomatic corps or something. We're commoners. We can't aspire to much. We're not at the bottom rung. Our standing is enough to grant us a nice living." "I know, but I need to go up there," Wyatt replied, smiling softly. "Mom asked you to try and convince me?" "Dad," Weskel replied, sighing. "I'm going to miss you, Wyatt. All of us will," he added. Wyatt stopped his wood carving and set his tools aside. Then he rubbed Weskel's head. He was only 12, but he was already more mature than he was. "You'll be a proper hunter once you turn 16. I bet you'll become a ranger in less than 5 years, Wes." "I hate it when you do that," Weskel replied, but didn't stop his older brother. "Why, you're not, doing it just because you want revenge?" Wyatt stopped rubbing his little brother's head, but looked at him reassuringly. "I'll happily kill any Drazen I come across. Same goes for pirates, but I won't plan to go out there to do that, Wes. I genuinely want to see the universe and serve the Principality. Revenge is the last thing on my list," Wyatt replied, then returned to his carving. "I'm going to miss you all, too. I'll write as often as I can. You know how expensive messages can be." Weskel nodded, offering his big brother a sincere, toothy grin. "Just promise you won't get yourself killed, all right?" Pain. World-shattering pain coursed through his body, yanking him away from a bittersweet memory, the day before he went to enlist in the academy. His eyes shot open, but his vision was blurry and tinged with red and black. He tried to scream, but he couldn't do it. His chest hurt, his ribs hurt, his head hurt. Everything hurt in a way he had never experienced before. At best, he could gurgle and cough bloody spittle as he heard his bones crack. His instincts overtook him, and he tried to flee from the pain, but he couldn't move. He was tightly strapped to something. Something was preventing him from moving. He could hear noises, but couldn't see who or what was making them. He cried openly, refusing to blink as the pain was too much, too intense. The pain suddenly stopped, and he went limp as his body trembled, while the death throes of the pain he had just endured lingered for long moments. His breathing was agitated, and it burned him. He was suddenly thirsty, very thirsty, and his vision returned to normal slowly. The white noise and the buzzing he was hearing also faded away, giving way to coherent noises he could identify and understand. Patient is stabilizing. Risk of cardiac arrest, 22% and decreasing. Internal bleeding, halted. Risk of cerebral hemorrhage, 11% and decreasing. Risk of death, low. Status, full recovery in 3 days. The monotone but oddly pleasant voice of a medical AI reached his ears. The urge and strength he felt when he desired to run away was gone, replaced by an incredible exhaustion. But he could move his eyes, and it wasn't long for him to decipher that he was inside a Medicare pod. Moments later, a figure wearing red armor and with blue hair stood next to him, and blue eyes looked down on him with a relieved expression. "See Cynthia?" he asked, barely making out her face through the blur that slowly went away from his eyes. Then, everything came back to him. Woodshaft, Clara's meeting, the assault on the Caiston station, the arrival of the Drazen, the battle. What happened? The Drazen— "Remain calm, Wyatt," Cynthia said softly. "After you passed out, we eluded the Drazen until they turned to flee. They are still moving away from the system. The prince moved to reinforce Woodshaft and save both Clara and the station. Thanks to you, those filthy creatures are now running away like the cowards they are. They left their people to die. Now they will be trapped between the defenders and the reinforcements." Good. That's good," Wyatt muttered, relieved and satisfied with the outcome. "Rest, Wyatt. You've earned this respite," Cynthia remarked, offering him a sincere smile. Wyatt allowed darkness to claim him a second later.